Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar From Dream to Destination, Understanding and Managing the Stress of Traveling Abroad, with our guest speaker, Nicole Lindberg, pardon me, and our host, Nathan Swab. I'm Eric Danielson, the Communications and Client Services Administrator at AFP. We are recording this webinar, and we will record future webinars as well. We will have a brief Q&A session after the webinar is finished, but we will not be recording that. The video will be posted on our website within the next couple of days. So in order to make sure everything runs smoothly, we have muted your mics and disabled your videos. If you do have any questions during the presentation, just feel free to put any questions in the chat and we'll address them afterwards. Excuse me. If you do need any assistance opening the chat window, you should see like a little menu bar and there'll be a little speech bubble where it says chat. So just go ahead and click that and it'll pop up and open the chat for you. So if you do have any suggestions for future webinars, we encourage you to post them in the chat or send us an email after the fact. But with that being said, I will hand it off to Nathan and Nicole.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, everyone. So like he said, we are so excited today to be joined by Nicole Lindberg of Nicole Lindberg Travel. And we're really excited to hear the information that she has from us. So welcome, Nicole. Thank you for taking the time to join us here. And would love to just hear how you got into this work, being a travel agent, and would just love to hear about a little bit of your background before we jump into the material that you have for us today.
Well, thanks, Nathan. Yeah, I'm excited to be here, talk about one of my favorite topics, travel. I come from a marketing and communications background. I was in that industry for about 30 years and came to a little bit of a crossroads during the pandemic when I ended up losing my job at an art center as the director of communications. So that time I decided I was going to turn my passion for travel and my love of planning trips into a full-fledged gig. So I launched my agency in January of 2021.
Nice.
And it's been a big adventure. We talked about some of the cool things I've gotten to do. I've gotten to click off my bucket list, Italy and Greece, as well as some unexpected destinations like Antarctica and Jordan.
Yeah.
And I've been improving my travel planning skills, which I had thought were great, but I've been improving them exponentially now that I'm a professional. So
yeah, awesome. And we saw the picture of Antarctica on the last slide. So that was really neat to see.
Yeah, and that's me in Greece.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again for taking the time to join us this afternoon. So many of our clients, this is a big part of their retirement, is planning to take trips that they've always wanted to take, traveling with family, and so we're so excited to get some pointers and some ways to reduce stress points. So yeah, take it away and share your travel wisdom with us.
All right, well, I'll do my best. We're going to walk through kind of a timeline. We're going to start really from those very beginning stages, figuring out even where and when you're going to travel, all the way through coming home. So let's get started. Deciding where and when. Those are some of the kind of the fundamentals of where you start, but there's other fundamentals that I think are really important. So of course, understanding whether you're traveling alone, with family, friends, or in a multi-generational trip. I think it's important that everyone has a little bit of a say. That way they feel included and they can get excited about the trip. But I also think the purpose of the trip is probably the more important thing. Why are you traveling? So is it for relaxation, adventure, cultural immersion, a blend of experiences, which it's typically. When you have those fundamentals in place, that really helps guide your itinerary. And when you're planning, you can make sure that you stay focused on those goals. So along with that, you'll also have your must-see destinations, experiences, and stuff for your trip. It's great for if you have flexibility for when you travel. You want to travel when you want to get the experience that you want, but you also might want to be able to take advantage of some better airfare pricing or accommodation, reduce prices on accommodations. And all of that flows right into your budgeting. So figuring out your air, lodging, meals, activities, and transportation, shopping, travel insurance, that all kind of factor into that. And then the kind of the last part of that pre-work is writing down that list of things that you see will be travel challenges, language barriers, some potential mobility issues, dietary restrictions, and then think through strategies to address those. I'm going to address some of those today for you guys, but travel advisors, online forums, and destination guides can be a really great source for a lot of that type of advice and recommendations. So once you have all that in your back pocket, now we're ready to start looking at roughing out an itinerary. And I know the phrase itinerary can sound kind of limiting to some people. They feel like it's too structured, but I'm a firm believer in having spontaneity, time, and flexibility built right into that itinerary. So you can have time built in to enjoy the afternoon, to have a long dinner, to switch things up, while you're traveling. And it also, when you're roughing out an itinerary like that, it makes sure that you, one, keep back onto your goals, and that you're also mindful of including something for everyone when you're planning that, and that you don't overschedule yourself. So you can see where maybe you've crammed too many activities in one day. Another really important part of travel stress for me is having everything organized and all my information in one place. So I do it through a digital itinerary tool, but whether you do it online or with printing it all out on paper, having one place to go to where you've got all of your reservation information, your ticket information, all those details really gives me a huge peace of mind.
Yeah. So you're not endlessly scrolling through your email looking for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Good. Good.
So once you've got your itinerary kind of ready to go, you start looking at booking your various components. So flights, such a big expense and a big component driving really everything else when you're going to be in destinations. So a lot of times we start out with research using something like a kayak or Google Flights. I tend to use Google Flights just as a personal preference. I like their filters. It lets me really narrow down airline preferences, layover preferences, ticket leveling if you want first class economy. I won't take a layover in certain destinations that are less than a certain amount of time. I also don't want it to be 17 hours. So you can kind of put those parameters in there. And then you can set an alert to start watching those prices. I think it's important to remember there's no magic window on when to book, especially since the pandemic. Pricing for flights, there's no it's best to book on Tuesdays. But I do recommend for international flights that you plan 3 to 6 months that you should have those tickets. That really then gives you, for accommodations, you still have a lot of nice availability, and that kind of stuff if you've got that big component pinned down. Accommodations, I kind of similar, kind of a rinse and repeat a lot of that between travel advisors, online forums, and like Google Maps or other destination guides. I really like to prioritize a location that's very convenient to the things you're planning to see and do so that you're not spending all your time in transit. And then looking at activities. I have really found some of the most enriching activities I've had when I've traveled have been kind of guided experiences, whether that's a cooking class in Athens or, a local guide in Vienna taking us to experience the cafe culture. And when you're looking at those types of experiences, some things I think are really important details to consider are the size of the group. I'm personally kind of picky. I prefer a group that's not bigger than about 20 people, but even better, smaller or a private experience. What's included and excluded, because sometimes you can get onto a tour and find out that the entry ticket isn't included, and so you need to be paying for that on site. Where your tour starts and ends for logistic purposes, understanding that, and whether they're picking you up or if you have to meet at a certain location. And that all just sort of helps set expectations for that experience. Is it meeting what you want while you're there? And then transportation, which can be anything from by feet or by flight. I think the biggest stressor for me when I'm traveling, I've had a long overnight flight. I hate that, like, what am I gonna do to get from the airport to the hotel? So
Mhm.
I like arranging for a personal driver. It's really not cost prohibitive, and it's a really nice way to land and know you've got somebody literally standing there with your name on a sign to pick you up and take you where you need to go. But whether you're doing that or some other plan, just have a plan so that you know and you're not just, it's so much going on when you're landing that to have that one
Mhm.
piece locked down,
Yeah.
to me, relieves a lot of stress when you're flying.
Yeah. So Nicole, when you are putting together different trips for your clients, are you building around flights first and then accommodations and then excursions and like I don't know, layering or building the foundation with the plane tickets and then going from there?
Yep, and then kind of that flow, yep, because the flights, until you have locked down those dates, you can't book hotels.
Yeah.
And you know, the hotel flow, which is kind of being driven by that itinerary as far as where you're gonna be when, then we don't want to plan any activities until we know where we're going to be. And then once we know where we're going to be, both for hotels and things we're going to do, then I
Mhm.
also look through kind of another transportation component is how do you get from A to B? So if you're, which I think can often people can kind of forget, like, oh, I don't know it's going to take me 30 minutes to walk there, or great, it's going to take me 30 minutes to walk there. And then planning accordingly. And maybe having that, like, oh, well, then I'm going to leave an hour and a half before we need to go so we can stop and get gelato on the way, and that kind of thing. And then you're not rushing around last minute. I think another big kind of stress
Yeah.
reliever.
Yeah. Well, it is important to prioritize gelato. So,
Yes. At every opportunity.
yes.
Okay, so then, well, let's talk about something a little less stressful, packing. I think I think I probably get more people panicking about packing than anything else. And I laugh, there's so many products that are out there, so clearly everybody panics a little bit about packing. So versatile clothing, we hear it all the time, but it's true. If you can create a wardrobe that's very interchangeable layers, mix and match, and flexible to kind of adapt for your day. So whether you can start out the day doing a little hike or city walk, and then you may or may not get back to your hotel. And so being able to transition all the way through your day till night, having that kind of layers and flexibility is important. And I also think that once you've created that, it helps reduce a lot of that bulk. I've become a big carry-on only person.
Mhm.
Might mean I have to do some laundry during a trip.
Mhm.
Most hotels, you can send it out. Um, but to not have several or large bags that I'm schlepping around, especially in Europe,
Mhm.
we've got cobblestone streets and taking trains and small hotel rooms,
Yeah.
less less is really more, makes that whole experience a lot less stressful.
Yeah. So if somebody does want to go the carry-on route, um, are you finding any difficulty getting through security with toiletries, things like that in the carry-on bag?
You know, as long as you stick to the TSA rules,
Mhm.
you can, and usually you can really pare down a lot of that. I'm a pretty low maintenance gal, so for me, it's been pretty easy, but I know I travel with a lot of friends who want a hair dryer when they're traveling. Well, almost every hotel has had a hair dryer in it, so
Mhm.
just for some of that bulk, it's nice. I've actually seen a lot of people travel with a lot more liquids than the TSA technically allows. They haven't had issues with it, so I think it's you take a little bit of a risk, but
Yeah.
I tend to just prioritize the things I can't get by without. Like I'll use the hotel shampoo and that kind of stuff, and just bring the things I need, like my stuff to keep me from having frizzy hair.
Okay. All right. Good.
And I think that another key thing in packing, when you talk about liquids and TSA, is that TSA screening. And if you pack smart, that whole process is a little less stressful. Knowing how to get to your electronics and your liquids, keeping them easy to access. And I mentioned this again later in my presentation, but when you're coming from another country, their security is entirely different. So knowing where those things are makes all that a lot less stressful and quick. You don't have to unpack everything at security.
Yeah. That's the type of thing to research then if you know, for example, you're flying in and out of Rome, researching the standard, the security standards for whatever airport you're flying in and out of.
Some of that can actually be a little hard to find out. So
Mhm.
just being prepared, knowing those are the biggies that most airlines, security processes are going to want to look at,
Mhm.
having those easy to access. But yeah, you might run into a situation like when I was in Georgia where there was no liquids in anything.
Oh, wow.
Even after we went through 3 different security locations, and they even had, before we boarded the plane, they went through everything, and there were just huge bins of shampoo and water bottles and
Hmm.
stuff. You have 0 liquids on the plane.
Wow. Wow. Interesting.
And then I'd say the last thing I was going to mention is that I do have a much more detailed packing list and travel tips list that I share with my clients, and I'm happy to share with your clients. I just need to get somebody's email so I can send them that link.
Okay. All right. Great.
All right. Technology and money. Talk about some other stuff that can both be stressful and hopefully alleviate some stress. For me, my phone is my travel sidekick. As much as it's nice to unplug at times when you're traveling, to me, it's kind of a critical component because it's where I have my boarding pass, my itinerary, Google Translate. That camera feature is huge. If you haven't used it, where you can do a live read of something like a menu.
Oh,
Not perfect, but it helps you understand things. I've even used it in
yeah.
Arabic and Greek, reading signs. It's been amazing.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a good tip.
WhatsApp is also really used a lot by other countries, more so than the US. And so that's how like drivers sometimes will communicate with you. Hotels might communicate with you through WhatsApp.
Mhm.
And then you need to have all your cords. But I also think that can kind of get forgotten is a voltage adapter, because sometimes the way the power is coming through is different than ours.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that sometimes if you don't have that voltage adapter, that things get really hot.
Mhm.
Just to protect your electronics, I recommend that kind of a plug adapter.
Mhm.
And like I said, okay, Wi-Fi, usually you can get by on Wi-Fi and WhatsApp. There are, most phone carriers have some sort of a plan. I have Verizon. I pay $10 a day to activate cellular when I want it.
Mhm.
In most of the countries around the world, there's very few places it doesn't work. So
Yeah. Is that something you find helpful, adding on that international feature when you are traveling?
I do. So I've heard people talk about getting SIM cards and that kind of thing, but then you don't have your cell number attached to that. It's a different number usually. And so to me, part of having my phone and having cellular is having reachability.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I like having that as an option. I like knowing um, what it's going to cost me if I need it. If we're traveling with a group, often it's just like, who's going to turn it on? So, not everybody needs to have it, but it can be really helpful if you need it for directions or making calls and stuff when you're not in Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And money, the other one I get asked a lot about what to bring. Should I bring cash? How much should I bring?
Mhm.
Uh, and it really depends on your trip. So again, I would get some consultative of advice for how much cash maybe to bring. I usually try to bring at least a few $100s in US in the local currency, which
Mhm.
I'll often order from my bank. They don't typically have them on hand, so it takes a few days for them to get that in. Um, or for sure before you leave the airport to hit up an ATM. So have a couple of credit cards that have no foreign transaction fees,
Mhm.
and to have some sort of an ATM card that you use in country. And I always focus on going to ATMs that are at banks,
Mhm.
or talking to your hotel or getting some other recommendation for a reputable location. There can be kind of some randomly placed
Yeah.
ATMs that
Yeah.
aren't your best. They
Yeah.
aren't.
Okay, so the money part, obviously that fits in with what we do here with financial planning. So typically you'll get some cash from your local bank before you even get on the plane and head out for your trip. And then you also want to make sure you have a couple of credit cards as a backup with low or no foreign exchange fees as well.
Yeah.
And a debit card that you can use at an ATM at a bank at your destination also.
Correct.
Okay, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. And I think people can be surprised sometimes. I feel like through the pandemic, we got very used to Apple Pay and doing credit card transactions. But I just talked to someone who came back from Japan and
Mhm.
I had to keep on going to the ATM because all the small businesses didn't want to take credit cards or wouldn't take credit cards. So they need
Wow.
a lot more cash in Japan, which I feel like is in my head a very technology forward.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's probably because they decided not to as opposed to we're not able to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Financial decision for that little business. So
yeah,
cash can be king. Well, and again, back to gelato. You gotta have your cash.
I know. Yeah.
All right, we're ready to go to the airport. So I think we were chatting, Nathan, before we started about getting to the airport early, and it's true. Even if you fly through security, it's nice to have that time buffered in before you get there so that if there are delays, you're not
Hmm.
stressing out. So I have TSA PreCheck through my global entry.
Mhm.
I think everyone should have it, but then of course, then it wouldn't be so great if everybody had it. But it really does make that airport screening easier. Typically, you don't have to take anything out of your bag. You don't have to take off your shoes. I still always plan just in case. Not all airports have TSA PreCheck
Mhm.
gate areas. And like I said, I always wear shoes that are easy to take on and off. I always wear socks in case I have to take off my shoes.
That's a good travel tip.
Um, and I think I've known people too who want to travel in sandals, but then stash a little pair of socks in case they have to take them off so that you're not barefoot on the airport floor.
Yeah.
I would say if you don't have like the pre-check, global entry, clear won't help you get back home necessarily, global entry will. And another kind of thing to help you get back home is an app called Mobile Passport Control.
Okay.
It's not always open. It's not always an option, but when it is, it's sort of that in between global entry and standing in the regular immigration line. So it allows you basically to pre-upload all of your passport information, and then there's usually a shorter line that you can jump into with
Okay. Mobile passport control.
passport control.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about those screening things, making sure your water bottles are empty, but knowing where your electronics and liquids are. Have your boarding pass and ID in hand when you're approaching security. They'll want to see if you have TSA PreCheck. And if you aren't subscribing to that, actually always check your boarding pass because sometimes they do randomly assign it. And so you might have a nice little surprise and get PreCheck. I also, again, I try to be proactive approaching it. So I'm not wearing a hat. I don't have lots of jewelry or watches on. I kind of save all that stuff for after. Get through security and then re-equip and figure out where I gotta go and have that time to myself if I can.
Yeah. Good.
And then staying informed. So we talked about getting there early, but then FlightAware is a great tool. Sometimes you can see potential delays before you even leave for the airport. If your flight hasn't, if the plane that you're supposed to be taking hasn't even gotten to your airport yet, it'll let you know. And you can set up alerts on there. I also just learned a really cool trick. If you text yourself your flight number, so if you were flying Delta flight 1771, which I just flew, you type DL1771 into your text it to yourself or text it to your travel companion. That now becomes a live link. And when you press on that, it gives you live updates about your flight. So same, it'll show you where it is in the air. It'll show you gate numbers, baggage claim numbers. It's really cool.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I always recommend you do double check that gate number and have an idea of how far it is to get there. I know you were talking about your lovely airport and how quick and easy everything is, but not all airports are like that. And
Right.
sometimes you have a gate that is quite a ways, several trams away.
Mhm.
Building, that is another thing you have to build in, not just getting through security, but then getting to that gate area. And if you need assistance at all, that extra time is huge for that because even if you request it, sometimes you're waiting. And then you always have to remember to be your own advocate. Even if you've put that request in, you need to say it again to the people there at the airport. I need some help. Here's what I want. Here's where I need to go. And then get that help as needed.
Mhm. Okay.
All right. We're at the airport. Now we're going to get into the plane. So I'm not going to talk about the fear of flying. That one I'm going to leave for the pros, but talking about other things you can do to kind of make those transitions better is starting to kind of get in that mindset of where you're going. There's an app called Time Shifter that actually will give you days ahead of when to start trying to sleep, and caffeine, no caffeine, daylight, that kind of thing. But even simply being aware of what time it's going to be when you get there can help you do what I call is planning your flight. So when you're planning your flight, it's thinking about when am I going to be awake, eating meals, etc. And then when should I be sleeping, or we could just call it resting, but giving your body that chance to rejuvenate.
Mhm.
When I have my sleep time, I cocoon, much like this woman here, where I am in a sleep mask. I have noise canceling headphones, a pillow, blanket, close the window shade, unlike her, but try and do my best to just shut down so that when I'm landing, because a lot of times you're landing in the morning,
Mhm.
and trying to be as rested as you can, because you've got a long day ahead, typically too. So yeah, even if you don't sleep, give yourself some rest, and then give yourself that like re-engagement time before you're going to land. So then you're ready for the arrival stuff.
Yeah. Now, do you do that on the way back as well?
I do. I'm not as good about it coming
Yeah.
home, 'cause I'm not as excited about coming home.
Right.
Going. But you can definitely do the exact same thing going the other direction, is that same, what's it going to be when I get home? And I do it a little bit, like, oh, I'm going to be getting home at 10 o'clock at night. I shouldn't sleep the entire time on the plane.
Yeah. 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 Are there a minimum number of time zones you have to cross before you'll start preparing
I
in
would,
advance?
I think it's about 4,
Okay.
or you'll have kind of some jet lag. Not that 2 or 3 aren't going to kind of throw you off a little bit, but it's not as impactful as like when you're going and it's a 7-hour time, 7 or 8 hour time difference that can really throw you off.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
All right, so now we're arriving in a new country, which is exciting and overwhelming. So we talked a little bit about knowing some of the customs, what to expect when you're getting to this new destination as much as you can. Um, it's also important that everybody you're traveling with know a couple simple things. And it's not bad to remind yourselves, because I know when I'm landing and my ears are plugged and I'm can't read any signs and it's a new airport, it can quickly make me draw a blank. So when the customs people ask you, how long are you here for and where are you going, is to know that.
Mhm.
So, and usually they want to know even just like a hotel, or we're going to the Holiday in Rome, as long as everybody knows that, then hopefully customs won't trip you up and make you feel stressed when you don't need to be. And I also say, don't be afraid to ask for help. You're in a strange airport, you don't speak the language. Most of the people that will speak English and are there to help, usually very helpful. When we talked about planning your exit, I like having a driver, but knowing that all helps in the stress component of getting to the new country. And if you haven't already got cash on hand, then making sure you don't forget to hit some in the ATM before you go.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so what else could happen while you're traveling? So we're going to talk a little bit about health and safety things. I think this causes a lot of people concerns before you arrive. So I think we all know we're supposed to always keep our prescription medications with us. It's important, if you're not keeping them in their original containers, to bring some sort of paperwork that kind of goes with the medication you're traveling with, whether it's on your phone or printed out. And if you have other non-prescription things that you're wanting to travel with, I also recommend checking the embassy site. I think I put it on my slide there, to see what things may or may not be acceptable in that country, because not all things are acceptable in other countries that we take for granted here in the US, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So most prescriptions, usually that's not the issue. It's more of the over-the-counter stuff that it's good to double check if there's something you really rely on having. Travel insurance, I think I recommend this for all of my travelers, especially because most US medical insurance providers don't cover you when you're out of the US.
Mhm.
And so it's really a great way to help kind of protect yourself against unforeseen expenses and experiences. So I think it's a great thing to have. Square Mouth is a super great research tool for that. So it's sort of a clearinghouse. They don't sell the insurance, but that's a research tool. So
Okay.
it helps you compare plans so you can pick something that addresses the needs that you have. And the STEP program, if you aren't familiar with it, it's the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, and it's offered through the State Department. And what it does is it'll notify the embassy or consulate where you're traveling that you're in country. So if there is some sort of a big emergency, they know you're there and you've given them your contact information that they can reach you while you're traveling. And then lastly, I'd say safety wise is your personal safety. A lot of that is trying to avoid the annoyance of pickpocketers. So I don't tend to wear anything flashy. I have everything zipped and tucked, and I never put stuff on my back or hang it off the back of my chair or set it on the floor. It's kind of the perfect opportunity for sticky fingers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good.
Great. So then, kind of the unexpected. I think if we've done our job so far, most of the other unexpected things that could happen while you're traveling shouldn't be a big deal now. Hopefully, the biggest thing, having a good mindset, knowing that things are going to kind of go wonky. Often that's what we end up telling stories about when we come home. They could be hiccups instead of, trip derailments. Again, having that travel insurance to give you that peace of mind and some financial protection in case of those kind of major incidents. And there's a lot of small incidents, benefits that a lot of those provide too, with delays and baggage issues. And then I'd be remiss not to say that helping you through unexpected, someone like a travel advisor can be super helpful, especially when you have things like a missed or canceled flight and you need help rearranging accommodations, transportation, activities. I've often been the one in the background doing that for my clients when they've those types of things.
Yeah, and that I can understand how that would be super beneficial.
Yeah, a big stress reliever. And they're like, I have to catch a flight, but I need to do it. And I'm like, get on your plane. I'll deal with the rest. It'll be
Yeah,
fine when you land. So,
yeah,
no.
yeah, excellent.
All right. So now you've had a great trip. You're packed up and you have to head back to the airport and come home. So again, arrive early. We've talked about not knowing the what you'll see when you get there as far as the security processes. Also, if you're flying from Europe, a lot of times, if you've done any shopping and you have a VAT refund, that's where you'll file that paperwork. So you want to have time to find that desk and submit that paperwork. And then I also talk about kind of one of the stresses of coming home is kind of that post-vacation blues. So yeah, you're coming home to a mountain of laundry, an empty fridge, and a flood of emails. It can be a bit depressing. So I just give you self permission to feel a little sad and give yourself some grace. But then it's important to preserve those memories somehow, because that's sort of that rebound of like, I'm sad I don't have my trip. So now I need to preserve those memories. So a couple little things I like to do. I actually do like the social media posts while I'm traveling or right when I get home, because it's fun to see that a year ago, 3 years ago, pop up in my memories on social media. It always gives me a little tickle. We have a digital album, a photo frame, I should say, that's in our living room that just my husband keeps throwing photo pictures in there. So they kind of cycle around, which is fun to see. We also collect Christmas ornaments when we travel. So usually the dumber the better, but it means every time we're decorating the tree, we're like, oh yeah, remember when we got
Yeah, yeah, that's fun to have like a specific type of memento. So ours is refrigerator magnets,
oh
and
yeah.
it's just fun to see the collection grow.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think, yeah, no matter how you choose to preserve those memories, I hope everyone's future travels are a little less stressful.
yeah, yeah. Well, Nicole, this has been so good. I have, in the interest of time, I've kept a number of my questions to myself. Oh, Ireland as well. Do you know how many countries you've been to?
Oh, I did track it. I think I put it on my very first slide.
Oh, okay. I missed it.
It might be maybe like 30. I have a long way to go.
Okay. That's
It's
that's a
about
very
5 comments or so.
yeah.
So,
Oh, well, this was so good. And then, of course, here's your contact information, and we're going to open it up to see if there are any questions. But there's your website, your email, your phone number, and obviously we can connect with you as well on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp.
yep. And if you want that packing list tips thing, then just shoot me an email and I'll get a link to you.
Okay, all right, very good. Eric, can we go ahead and open this up for questions as soon as the closing credits finish there?